Wonderful. Okay, well, welcome to Silverlink 101. The purpose of this meeting here is to teach interns how to improve their award submissions, make the best of their entries. Um, this is going to be a tutorial, a training session hosted by our PRSA chapter um, to help us PR professionals prepare and structure and submit winning entries. So today we've got Amanda and Andrea who have had winning entries, and they're going to go through their presentations, what worked for them, and what got them across the finish line. So Beth, I will let you kick it off from there.
Yes, thank you, Sydney. And for those of you watching who don't know, Sydney and I are co-chairing this year's Silverlink Awards. So as you're going through your entries, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to one of us or anyone on the committee. We would be happy to help provide any advice or answer anything that you have questions on. So I will share my screen and go through a little bit about the entry process. Okay. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, perfect. So if you go to our website, prsatulsa.com, and go to the Silverlink tab, this is where you'll find everything you need to know about Silverlink Awards. So currently entries are open. The deadline is June 1st, which is a Monday. And that feels far away, but it will creep up on you for sure. So start getting those entries put together. And here there are a couple things. So we have this call for entries that really lays out everything you need to know about entering. So if you click either this image or this link, it will automatically download the call for entries document. And I have a couple things pulled up here that I want to highlight. So the first is the different categories that you can enter in. As you see, we have 16 different categories across both larger scale campaigns and then smaller tactics. If you want to enter a campaign, you can also enter individual tactics within that campaign as separate entries. So say you had some kind of launch event, but you also created a video for it. You can also enter the video as a separate entry. So pretty much any communications work that you have done in the past year can qualify. As you can see, there are videos, special events, media relations, creative collateral on our tactic side. And then on campaigns, we have everything from community relations to internal employee communications. And then for both campaigns and tactics, we do have student categories. And for students, there is a reduced entry price. So if you have a campaign that you worked on as a student, feel free to enter that. And then I will also go over to this part of the call for entries, which talks about judging criteria. So our Silverlink Awards are judged by APRs and PRSA National Fellows within our chapter and or the Southwest District if we have to increase our judging pool a little bit. So we have a really great set of judging class of judging APRs in our chapter. We have a lot of APRs in our chapter, and so that gives us a really strong foundation to work from. And if a judge has a particular relationship with you, you know, you're friends, you work together, or maybe you guys are competitors in the same industry, there is a recusal process. So just so everyone knows that. So they all abide by the PRSA Code of Ethics and really provide our entrants with some high-level strategic feedback to help you continue to learn and grow as a professional. So all entries are judged on a 100-point scale using the RPI process: research, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So as you can see, each one of these is worth 25 points. And under these, it really lists out exactly what you need to be putting in your entries. Just because something was a great campaign, was a great video, was a great project, doesn't necessarily mean that it automatically becomes a great Silverlink entry. So you really have to put in the work to show your work, to show why it was such a great campaign. And even if it didn't exactly have the results that you wanted, if you can show that you've gone through the process, then that still makes a really great Silverlink award. So entry scoring between 85 to 100 points will receive a Silverlink, and then entry scoring 70 to 84 points will receive an award of merit. And this is really important, especially if you've never entered before and aren't familiar. Entries are only scored against this criteria, not against other entries. So there can be and usually are multiple winners in each category. And so that is really great. Everyone who puts forth amazing work gets recognized for it. And winners will be notified by or in August 2026. So once you are ready to enter, you'll find a couple things here on the website. First are the entry templates. So we have separate entry templates for campaigns and then for tactics. Campaigns are obviously much larger, much more involved projects. So you're probably going to have more things to show in that. So the campaigns template gives you more slides to lay that out. And if you click on either of these links, it will auto download as a PowerPoint template. They're very plain, bare templates, so feel free to zhuzh them up, put your own branding on them, your own colors, make it really creative and fun. The world is your oyster when it comes to that. And so once you have your entries actually put together in that PowerPoint template, you can either have it as a PowerPoint file or you can export it as a PDF. Either are accepted in the system. You will click on this form, this link here to go to the JOT form where you will enter your awards. So in here, I will go through this as if I'm entering myself. So I will put my name. I'm not going to put my real phone number, not that I don't think anyone is actually going to contact me. And then I'll put my company organization name. So some things to note, you can enter and pay for up to 5 entries at a time using this form. If you have more than 5 total entries, you can still obviously enter those. Please do. We would love as many as possible, but enter the rest in a new submission. But you can put up to 5 as long as the name of the organization and the person entering them are the same. And also note, if you want to start a submission and come back to finish at a later time, there is a save and continue later button that you'll see down at the bottom. But just note that if you're wanting to move in between pages, if you have multiple entries, all the required fields must be filled out when you're moving between those, or else it won't let you progress. So you can enter placeholder information for the time being if you don't have your entry put together all the way yet. Just remember to replace those before you submit. One thing on the company organization name, this is what will be listed on the trophy if your entry wins an award. So if you would like more than one organization to be listed on a trophy, if you collaborated with a firm, please list both names here. And then if you're submitting student entry, just list the name of your school. Then you'll click your company organization type. And then this is where you will upload a company logo. I'm just going to put a random image that is in there. That is not my company's logo, but this is the logo that will be used if your entry wins an award in the slide presentation. Then you will select your PRSA Tulsa membership status. This is what's going to determine the price of your entry. We have 3 different prices for members, non-members, and then students. So if something looks off with the price whenever you're about to submit, just come back and make sure that the right membership status is selected. So I'll say member. Are you submitting this entry on behalf of a client? No. If you did, you can put that name here. Did you work with a firm on this campaign or tactic? No, but if you did, you can put the name here. Entry title. This is what will be listed on your trophy if you win an award. So make sure that you put the exact thing that you want on there. Your organization name will also be on there, so it's not necessary to repeat your organization's name in this title, just for you to know. And then entry category, whether it's a campaign or a tactic, then this drop-down menu will appear based on what you select. Crisis communication. And then here is where you will upload your entry and supporting materials using the template that has been provided. So I'm just going to upload the blank entry template since I do not have my entry put together yet, but I will. And then this is where you would uphold a placeholder if you don't have it ready yet, if you're just getting the entry started, like I have here. And then you'll enter a brief description of your entry, kind of like an elevator pitch of your entry. What were the high points? What were your biggest accomplishments that would be used in the Silverlink program if your entry wins an award. So up to 50 words, you do not have to use all 50. I'm sure our MCs would appreciate if you didn't, but you are welcome to use up to 50. Put a test there. And then this is where if you have another entry that you'd like to submit at the same time in the same submission, you can select that here. I'm just going to go through one entry here, but if you selected yes, the next page would ultimately bring up the same information that you just entered. Specific to your entry, you don't have to enter your personal information again. But I'm going to say no, I'm just going to do one entry. And this is where you would save and continue later if you want to come back to your entry, and you should get an email link that would let you come back to your submission. But I'm just going to say no, I'm ready to be done and click next. So based on the information you have entered, it will calculate here how much your entries should cost, how many entries that you have submitted. So based on that information, I am submitting one entry at the member price of $65 for a total of $65. If that does not look correct, just go back and make sure that all your information looks correct. And then you have two choices. You can pay now with a credit card within the system, or you can ask to be sent an invoice to pay via check. So since I don't want to put my credit card information in here now, I will click send me an invoice to pay with a check and then hit submit. And my submission has been received. So in my email, I would get an email with confirmation of my submission and then also an invoice. If either of those don't work for you, if something gets wonky or screwed up, my information is on the website. Feel free to contact me. I have all of the back end access to the job form. So if you need anything, if you have any questions, if something's not working right, just feel free to reach out and we'll get it figured out. That's all I have. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to pass it over to Amanda Flaherty, former chair of the Silverlink Awards, and who won a Silverlink Award last year with her Smarty Grants trivia night. So, Amanda?
Thank you. Well, again, this is the tactic that I entered last year. So, just Beth touched on it, but you can kind of see on the far left of, you've got 13 slides, which one of those is the title slide. So it's really 12 slides of content. And so it's intended to be 3 research, 3 planning, 3 implementation, 3 evaluation. But these are your slides to shift as you need to. So if you need a little extra space, the only thing you cannot do is add another slide. So just wanted to kind of call that out. And I will get this in presentation mode so that you can see it. And so again, Beth also mentioned that you get a plain Jane template. I created the template, but our intent is that you can put your company's branding, or like this is not TTCU's branding, but this is our event branding. So this is I implemented our first annual fundraiser last year, and it's a really fun, casual, low-key, high-energy trivia night. We purposely did a 90s theme because TTCU was celebrating our 90th anniversary that year. So as you can see, everything is very loud and wonderfully 90s obnoxious and nostalgic. So I wanted to incorporate that, like every single element of our event did, and I wanted our entry to show that too. So I think it's always best practice to add background information. Even though we're all in Tulsa and we're mostly aware of what's going on, nobody knows your brand or your project like you do. So like set the tone, make sure the judges really understand what's going on and why you're doing this and why this is important. So it's always good to kind of set the, hey, here's the problem I'm trying to solve, and here's our goal, or our overall intent for the project. So I always take some time to make sure that it's framed really well. And then this actually dives into the content of the research. So the intent and the strategy of the research, it's a best practice. So highlight those bold words that you are answering every single criteria that's listed. So you can get as many of the 25 points in each of the categories. Sometimes it just helps the judge find it, if they're going back and referencing it. So noting whether it's primary or secondary research. And I think that's where some people get hung up, having been in roles. There's only really been a couple of projects throughout my entire 21-year career that it's been like true major research, but like we all have access to research. So what was last year's data, the stats, market research, a Google search, any of that. So, you know, just put in what you can, put in what you really did. So I talked through some of the fundraising details. I conducted interviews because I was a new employee implementing a new annual fundraiser. So conducted interviews with our leadership and just kind of compiled all of that. I also, a big thing for this event is we were going to our business vendors to come alongside us and support our teacher grants. That's what we raise money for this event. And so I pulled the vendor list. So I put in a screenshot of this massive vendor list and then put together the estimate of the, in essence, like how am I going to get to this rough revenue, and really created this document. And you know, it's like, great, every little thing that you did for the event, put it in here, show your work. I think it's so important. And like one of my biggest takeaways when I'm trying to advise people or have done Silverlink 101 before is that just because you had an amazing project does not mean it's a great entry and that it will win. So you've got to, just like in math, you've got to show your work. So continuing into the next to planning phase, talked about our goal. Objectives was to reach $20,000. We had no history of it. You know, we had never done a big event. I had, but our foundation had not. The sponsors and the event capacity, strategy, tidbits, obviously some of the tactics and why we wanted to do this event and where, how we were going to add some, you know, event add-ons for fundraising and our strategy to some of that. And then how we're going to evaluate it. So again, just touching on all of these bullet points that are in the expectations to earn these points. So continuing in the planning phase, the timeline. So marked out the timeline of everything that we did, some of the brainstorming. So ChatGPT 100% named this event, and I never would have come up with it in a million years. So I landed on Smarty grants, but it was really fun, you know, coming with. And then I kind of did an informal focus group with some employees of like, hey, what do we like the best? Went to 6 different venues that I knew were going to be in my budget, having done a lot of events throughout my career. So toured all of them, had a lot of great options and pros and cons. Ultimately, we went with venue 918 because it was centrally located. We could serve alcohol there, and it was honestly just a blank canvas, and I could create the entire event, and it was very reasonable to have it for the whole day. Continuing in on the budget, dove in deeper once we kind of knew a lot of elements of, okay, our you know, net going to make over 20 and net around 15,000. The save the date I put together, and then the trivia planning. So it's all custom trivia I created along with a member of our IT department who happened to moonlight as a trivia host, which is so fun. So put together the types of trivia, putting together the sponsorship one sheet so we could go into the planning. So again, just great screenshots of what you actually did. The event invitation that was emailed out to our entire company, our board members, our vendors, and then we also got to invite friends and family. So it's kind of an internal plus event. Some of the fun table names, we had 27 table names, but it was really fun to have like Spice Girls table and Blockbuster table and things like that. And then just a sample, which obviously the trivia it was slides and slides and slides and slides for the trivia, but just to kind of showing how we incorporated the theme and that it was engaging. And then some of the music playlist. It was fun to put together a 90s playlist. And then our program that was at every single place setting, just showing, hey, here's all we did. Of course, wanted to pull some of the professional photos. Just incredible to get to see, you know, people having a great time cheering on other teams. And then for the judges, I included a link so they could see all of the event photos if they wanted to see more. So a little bit more of the implementation. So quality, obviously, and creativity is a huge aspect of the implementation category to get a high amount of points. So really showed the examples of, hey, here's how We made it really custom, high quality, went above and beyond. A lot of times, the creativity, it's a great way to call out how you overcame obstacles. Sometimes things bubble up the day or the week of the event and like, hey, we did this and it was kind of worked a little miracle. So that's always nice to use like your problem solving as a creativity element too. Obviously, this one is visually very creative as well. And then one of our employees made an awesome highlight reel. So I included that for the judges that they could see basically a little TikTok of, hey, here's this whole event in a little glimpse. And then for evaluation, one of my goals at being the first annual was to sell out the event. We did, and I'm glad, because I wanted to be able to promote it this year. Like, hey, this event sold out, so you better get your tickets and tables now. Sold out with 216. Our goal was 10 sponsors, and I had 11. And then we had 16 employee tables. Our event revenue, again, our goal was $20,000. We netted 26,400 and just kind of broke down. So the event add-ons were like the hints and the mulligans, and we did heads or tails, which was a 50-50 pot. So added all that up. And then last year we used the Square for point of sale purchases, which they have great analytics. So I just took some time and took some screenshots of, hey, we know now, which I used this year to plan of, I know 111 heads or tails, were purchased. Like people bought multiple. So it was just really nice. And that 15 tables bought mulligans and hints. So this year I'm like, great, my goal is to get 20 tables to buy the hints and mulligans. So that was really great. And obviously, as so many of you all know, but if this is your first time entering, if you're doing these annual cyclical events, all of your evaluation is already now your research for next year's event. So all of this information, I'm going to enter this event again. It was wildly successful this year. We had a 94% increase in fundraising, and how great that now I have this data to go into. So overall results, we had a 32% increase in revenue and 18%, or sorry, a 32% above goal for our revenue and at 18% above our goal for like our net earnings. All of our objectives were achieved. And then just the last bit, it's always nice to show like the recap story. We did an email to all attendees, the intranet recap. And then I wanted to note, because it's really important, because survey and a post-event survey is such a standard thing that I actually elected not to do it that year for the first year. It would have been good data, but I didn't want to waste people's time too, because I knew we were changing venues. We needed a bigger one. And I knew that we were going to go with the digital trivia instead of all kind of traditional paper like you would do at an event or brewery. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait. And so this year, of course, I did a full survey. So, and then best practice showing that we did a debrief meeting with stakeholders and some of the elements that we want to incorporate in the next year. So that is everything. And I will kick it off to Andrea.
All right, thank you. That was so fun. That was
Thank
like a fun party. I'm Andrea Myers, and I'm with Honeymoon. I've got my sweatshirt on, but we are formerly Candor. We literally rebranded this week. So the deck I'm going to show you, the entry is Candor branded. So don't want to confuse anyone. Also, I loved seeing your entry too, Amanda, because if you're like me and you saw her beautifully branded fancy entry, you might think, oh, do I need to be doing that? And I would say, I mean, I thought it was great from a judging perspective, but what I'm going to show you is a pretty straightforward entry. So I think it's a good sign that it really is about the content. And so I've got kind of a pretty straightforward version. So I'm really excited to talk about this project and this entry that won Best in Show. This was for Oklahoma State Department of Health for their Back to School campaign. They had submitted an RFP. It was a very quick turn project where we had a very short period of time to submit a proposal. We were hired. We had about 30 days to develop a campaign and get it launched for the summer before school started. And the mission of the project was to encourage parents and guardians to do the back to school things, health related things that need to be done before school starts. So get your kids' birth certificates, get your well child exams scheduled, get those immunizations or your exceptions, get your shot records, all of those things, really so that people wouldn't wait till the last minute and it caused the strain on the system in August when everyone is trying to get ready for school. So this was a really fun one. A couple things to start that I think are important is Amanda talked about showing your work. So I'll talk a lot about how we did that. I think another thing is providing context. It can be really hard to know the right amount of context to provide in these kind of scenarios. If you've never judged before, I would encourage you to judge if you're an APR or a fellow. If you are not, or you can't judge for some reason, take a look at somebody else's entry. I'd be happy to share one of mine with you. I just think it's really helpful to look at it from the judge's eyes, and you start to understand what context you needed in order to really understand what was happening. So for this project, we did provide a little bit of context at the beginning about the time, the season of where we were in the state. It was part of this message was about getting shot records and immunizations up to date. This was an election year, though, in Oklahoma, where we are last in child immunizations, and we didn't want our communication about these important back to school topics to get political or to get people distracted. And so we really wanted to focus on all of the things that parents needed to do before back to school related to health, and focus on what we could do to drive action versus trying to, politically tell people what they needed to do, if that makes sense. So finding the right amount of context is really important. The other things I would say when it comes to research is we actually didn't do a lot of research. And I think looking back on my career of projects and opportunities to do entries, I think there have been times when I had great projects that didn't have a lot of research, and I felt like I couldn't enter them. I think this project is a really good example of you don't have to have really robust research. You probably do more than you realize, first of all, even when you say you didn't get a chance to do a lot of research. But this is a great example of very little primary research because we were moving so quickly and really using mostly secondary research. As Amanda said, use those words from the judging criteria, talk about primary research, talk about secondary research. Judges are looking for those words, and you can just make it easy for them by doing the highlights, but just repeating the words that's in that criteria will really help. We also found some ways to, and you'll see this throughout, where we started to give examples of how what we found in the research that ultimately led to the decisions we made. So in this case, we talked about the secondary research. We looked at census data, some other desktop research from a number of healthcare organizations, and that it revealed things like immunizations are less the word immunizations is less polarizing than vaccines, that when you use the OSDH logo, it adds credibility and things like that. So we tried to incorporate that even into this section, because then you'll see later on how we incorporated the research insights into our strategy. Of course, we spell out our goals and objectives over and over throughout this ad nauseum. We repeat a lot of that because we know how important it is that the judges see throughout the entire entry how everything you're doing is connected and tied to research. When it comes to supplementary material, again, because we didn't do a lot of primary research, there there wasn't a lot from that perspective. So we really just pulled in everything that we did. So we had some research that OSDH had provided about the audience, and then we had some of our own research. And one thing I would say is this table on the right is a good example of something we created for the sake of this entry. We hadn't put this together in this way before, but these were all of the sources that we used when we were doing our secondary research. So finding ways to be creative sometimes with your visuals can give you more visuals if you don't have a lot to start with. Okay, when it comes to planning, I mentioned this was a very fast campaign. We had 30 days to concept and then launch it. It largely focused on, because we were focused on action, the main central focus of what we were trying to get people to do was to download a checklist from the website that had all the things that parents needed to do. And I'll show you that in a second. It was great because it gave us something that was very measurable. And then we were also able to align to our strategy, make it about helping parents and guardians know what the things are they need to do and do them, versus making any judgments or being prescriptive about how they should do them. You'll see here that we talk a lot about, again, reinforce the connection between our research findings and the strategy. So wherever we could say, here's what we did in our plan and tie it back to research was a big part of, I think, why this entry was successful. And there are also some things that we did to provide a little bit more context, again, around the scenario we were in. So, and so they could understand all the things that went into this, it being such a short time frame. We had quick hit tactics that we could get out the door really fast. And then we had other things that were layered on over time. So we kind of laid that out for them so they could understand, why we did what we did. When it comes to planning, so typically, I think in entries, we try to show, if we have a formal comms plan, we'll show that. If we have pieces, we'll show that. So we have a little bit about our strategic approach, our channel mix, budget timeline. And then I think this was actually a really great thing that we did. We do this for campaigns, but a valuable thing that we did for this entry was to show each of our KPIs and then the rationale for each. So the judges could see that these weren't pulled from nowhere. Like we had looked at data from previous years, we had looked at our research and come up with these specific KPIs to drive the campaign. Okay, so getting into implementation, one of the things that we did here was just try to provide a quick snapshot of all of the content and all of the tactics that were included in this project. It was very, again, I can't say it enough, it was very fast. It was a weird summer. It was a great summer, but it was fast. We produced more than 30 video assets in multiple formats and languages, 3 audio spots, over 190 graphic variations, and 82 digital and social ad copy versions. So it was massive. But I think even just providing those numbers would help a judge understand the significance of what was accomplished in a short period of time. We talk about, again, how our campaign branding and tactics were tied to research and strategy. So there's some specific examples in there about how we did that, like influencer partnerships. Our research had showed that peer-to-peer communications were more effective than top-down communication. And so we reinforced that point, and then we say how we did that. We selected 8 partners and influencers to post content. And And then I think the other thing we did here was just kind of touching on how we were tracking the KPIs when it came to implementation, and just making sure that we've made that connection of how all of those would be tracked. And so when it comes to implementation, so this is the downloadable checklist. One thing I would say about this, again, like you're going to see a lot of really pretty content, but the checklist was the central point of the campaign, and it was very simple. And that's because we could prove from our research that simple, streamlined, direct communication would be most effective with parents and guardians, particularly when you're thinking about everything that they're dealing with over the summer, getting ready for school, and considering, first time parents with first time kindergartners or pre-Kers, and even beyond. So that was the checklist. Here are a bunch of graphic examples. We really, again, tied to the research, wanted these to be bold, attention getting, straightforward. So they're, you see a lot of the same copy here, but with a lot of different colors, a lot of different kids. And then of course, the kids and the messages were all placed where it made the most sense with the audiences. We provided examples of really a lot, maybe all of our videos and radio spots. As a former judge or somebody who's judged these, I'm never going to watch or listen to all of these, but I like having the ability to watch them if I want. So any kind of multimedia that you have, I think that's just a bonus to add for your entry. This was some of the influencer and sponsored content. And I think the point I would make here is that it can be really tempting to provide a lot of detail in these, add captions and, really get into detail. And there's nothing wrong with that, but judges are looking at a lot of information. So where you don't need to do that, where it's, straightforward, I think that can be just as effective. When it comes to how we covered evaluation, this campaign in particular exceeded nearly every KPI we had. That checklist that we showed you was downloaded 13,000 times, which was about 160% more than we had set our expectations for. Now, we'd never done it before either, kind of to Amanda's point about the event, but we had a rationale for why we chose what we chose. And then we were transparent about KPIs that weren't met and why we believe that was to be the case. Again, we found ways here in the evaluation to show how the results tied back to our research and our strategy. So we talk about, like the influencer content. So we had high engagement on influencer content. So we were able to kind of reinforce that, that connects back to the research that we got from the very beginning. The last thing we did here was we mentioned some national recognition that we received for this award or for this entry. Or for the campaign, I should say. I don't know if that helped us or not, but I think that was a nice add to show that another third party had recognized this work as being really exceptional. And then for the supplementary material, these are all screenshots from our reports that we provide to clients at the end of campaigns. And one thing I would say is that in my experience, and this one is a good example, it doesn't always have to be the pictures and the visuals that you use don't always have to be something that the judges can read and can get into. Sometimes I'll do pages like one kind of on top of each other, but just to show the body of the work or whatever it is, can be a good approach. So when we do these, we're digging for any kind of visuals that help reinforce reinforce what we did. But these, of course, were great. We had all of our, metrics from all of the specific things that we did. So I think the key, there's more. There were so many tactics. I think the last thing I would say is just a couple of key takeaways that I think, based on the judges' feedback on this entry, and our experience doing these entries. As I mentioned, robust research is not a requirement. It's more about showing the connection of research to strategy. Reinforce it over and over to an annoying degree. Use examples where you can. And I think this piece of guidance is it's good guidance for what to include and what not. So there are so many things, especially in a campaign like this. There's a million things that we could have included, and there were a lot of details that we left out. So we used, what was important context for the judges so that they could understand our work, and then what were strategic decisions or things that showed our understanding of the research, the strategy, and so forth. And that helped us decide what to cut back on. The next point is just to be creative about your visuals. I just think more visuals are good, especially, judges are human, and even if it's not pretty, but it shows that, some examples of things you did, I think that can be really valuable. We talked a lot about context. Again, I encourage you to judge if you're an APR, or to at least look at somebody else's from another organization you don't know very well. Look at their entry, and I think that'll help you get a sense of what level of context you really need. And then Amanda mentioned this as well, but just being very specific. Again, this is something you learn when you judge, like being so tied to the specific words in the entry, not skipping anything and assuming like, oh, we didn't do that, so I'm not even going to talk about it. If you didn't do primary research, for example, talk about why you didn't, like just really, really showing your work to the point earlier. So thank you.
That was amazing. Loved it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrea and Amanda. Great entries. I could definitely see why they won Silverlink awards, and I can see why Andrea's won Best in Show. They were really, really great projects. So appreciate you guys taking the time to show those.
Yeah.
Sure. I think my only other takeaway is that obviously our judges are so brilliant and well educated and well experienced, but they're also very busy. And so I just hope, I know we've kind of both touched on it, but that's the biggest thing, is like you just need to have the mindset where you're, without insulting their intelligence, kind of spoon feeding it to them, and you were in charge of guiding these judges through this entry to show them everything and keep it yes, like your expertise in all things strategic communications, but like you need to be really direct on this and this and this, so that will lead to more points in your entry. So that's our whole goal of being here today.
Yes. Well, thank you again. As a reminder, entries are due June 1st, and anything that was created between April 1st of 2025 to March 31st of this year is eligible to be entered, as long as it has not specifically been entered before. So yeah, Sydney, do you have anything else?
Nothing else, just reiterating what Beth shared at the beginning. If any questions come up, feel free to reach out to either of us. We're happy to help walk you through. And Amanda and Andrea, again, thank you so much for your time today. This was really, really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.